will say just from my own experiences through meditation, through breath work, and through plant medicine, we are genetically nearly identical. Every human on this planet, we are all connected in every way possible. I am firmly ensconced in my belief that humans are going to figure this out, that we are resilient, dynamic, magnificent creatures that are going to figure out this major transition that we have to go through. I think it's going to be very painful. There will be big losses, lots of destruction in ways that we probably don't even understand. At the end of it all, I am firm in my belief that humanity will win and that we will have abundance for all.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Love Conquers Fear podcast. I am so excited about Michael Pollan's new book that's coming out. He's really been promoting it heavily at this point. It's called A World of Peers. It comes out as of this recording in a couple of weeks. It looks amazing. He just did a New York Times interview on a podcast called The Interview. He's one of my favorite authors and has really done a lot for the movement towards the understanding of consciousness, and including psychedelics. He wrote How to Change Your Mind. That's one of my favorite books and documentaries. It's an amazing documentary on Netflix. I always recommend it to people that are curious about psychedelics because he really covers it in a very balanced way, takes you through the whole history. And he's just an amazing human being. And what A World of Peers is about consciousness. It's about this exploration of consciousness. And this really is the big topic. If you think about, last year, and I've covered this on the podcast, you had Dan Brown, the author of the Da Vinci Code, come out with The Secret of Secrets. That's a book that's deeply about non-local consciousness, meaning that consciousness is this fundamental property of the universe that our brains receive in some way, like antennas. And remember that two things can be true at the same time. You can both receive and manifest. If you have a damaged brain, you're going to see consciousness differently. You probably already know, as a watcher of this, that human beings see about 5% of observable reality as it is. There are a lot of animals like bats that see all different types of things. They navigate with echolocation. Different animals can see the magnetic poles. They can see infrared. We're very limited in this, what we can see in this reality. This is a really important topic, and it's growing more and more. Last year, outside of The Secret of Secrets, you had the telepathy tapes. Season 2 ended at the end of 2025. Amazing season, really goes into all forms of consciousness. You had Annika Harris, who's Sam Harris's spouse, who wrote Lights On. It's an audio-only book, a phenomenal book about the exploration of different theories on consciousness, and she concludes at the end of it that consciousness is fundamental. So this is really the topic that continues to play out there. And as I've said many times before, I really think that this is happening as a synchronicity. It's very Celestine prophecy, a great book by James Redfield. Highly recommend you read that one because you'll start to see synchronicities every day in your life. But this is happening for a reason, and it's happening because we're in this AI moment, and we'll unpack that a lot with my guest today. Really excited to welcome Jay Wilkinson to the podcast. So Jay is you're the founder and chairman of Do More Good, and you're I guess JD Messenger's boss, I would say, because he's the executive director
I would
of it.
call no one that.
Right. But, super excited about the conference we have coming up. But, and the fact that, your firm is publishing Love Conquers Fear, the book. Why don't we just talk about Do More Good and how you got to that point in your life? I've been involved in the conscious capitalism movement for years, so it was a real natural thing for me to get involved in this, and I'm looking forward to being one of your keynotes at the conference and talking about Love Conquers Fear.
We are beyond excited to have you there. It's hard for me to pin down what really led to the creation, the original idea behind what the Do More Good movement is about. And I'll share more context in that. But it likely came from two things. One, there was a study done maybe 10 years ago now by someone from NYU. And what they revealed is that the average person in the world, and in America in particular, 35 years of age and younger, as they've watched media, television, Netflix, all the things, more than 85% of the depictions of business people, leaders, managers, owners, are evil, negative. They're taking, not giving.
Right.
And so it's no wonder why so many young people have this perception that capitalism is evil. Right. It's what's causing problems. No, it's not a surprise. And I remember that study and researching and thinking, we have to do something about changing the narrative about what business can and does do for the world. Because capitalism is not the problem. Now, the type of capitalism that manifests in today's world, where there is all kinds of problems, which we I don't think we need to spend our time there.
Kind of the problems of putting profit over people.
Profit over people.
What
and
Jason Karp talked about in episode 3.
Nepotism, all the things. There's so many things. But capitalism, I believe, and what we believe at the Do More Good movement, is the greatest tool that humanity has ever invented for creating economic empowerment and for solving the world's biggest problems. But we have to be focused on the kind of capitalism that serves all of the stakeholders, which is what conscious capitalism is about, and all the other frameworks that we work with and that we partner with. So that study is one thing. I think the real seed, though, was planted for me when I was a kid. My grandmother lived to be 103 years old. Her name was Esther. And she is like the most remarkable influence on my life. I remember going over to the moving and storage company that she ran. She actually took over her father, my great-grandfather's business. It's a moving and storage company in 1919. She was, at that time, she was 18 years old when her father died. And she's the one that stepped in to help run the company. And when I was a child growing up, I would go over and hang out with her on the loading docks, and it was all men that worked for her because it was a really difficult industry. And I remember her, like the way she would hold court in her office, and the way she tended to all of these men. She knew everything about them. She knew their wives and girlfriends and children and pets, and the way she connected with people. And the way she treated people was just something that has never been lost on me. The town I grew up in central Nebraska, was on the Union Pacific Railroad, and it became one of the busiest intersections along the Union Pacific. And so there were lots of people coming through on the passenger trains back in the day. And there was a point in time, like happened all over America with the racial riots. There was a black man that was chased out of town because he purportedly, had some kind of advance towards this white woman. This happened in communities all across America in the 20s and 30s. But when this happened in North Platte, there was like an angry mob of men that went around from door to door and went to every black person's home. And said, if you're not out of town by the time the sun comes up, you're not going to be alive to see the sun. Wow. And so I always wondered when I was growing up why there were so few black people in our community. And then my grandmother shares this story. And what I learned from her is that she packed up, she sent her teams or crew into not all, but many of their houses, gathered all of their belongings, and had them sent off to Denver or Omaha, whatever direction they went. And didn't charge them for it. She didn't tell people about it because she was afraid of what the mob would do to her for helping people. But just the way that she moved through the world and the way that she tended to people and took care of people, she was like the original stakeholder capitalist, at least in my world.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And
it's incredible to have that type of example growing up.
I'll never forget the lessons from her. So I think that's where the seed was planted for me.
Yeah. Well, I'm a huge believer in capitalism. especially conscious capitalism. That's something I've practiced since I've been 24 years old as an entrepreneur. And, some of the best defenses I've seen of capitalism actually were on this podcast. Alexander McCoben, who was the CEO of Conscious Capitalism that John Mackey and I helped land to be the CEO. He's now the CEO of Liberty Ventures. He's on episode 19. That's a phenomenal episode
Love
on
Alexander.
it. John Mackey was on episode 30 and really gave a great defense of it. But, the best book to read on this subject, in my opinion, outside of the Conscious Capitalism book, is Enlightenment Now by Steven Pinker.
Yeah.
Just the chapter on inequality alone is worth the price of the book, because it'll really reframe, the way that you look at things, just as you look at the arc of history. But, we deal with abundance right now that we couldn't imagine 100 years ago, 200 years ago. I had Peter Wang on the podcast recently, and Peter, said, "Hey, you don't have to go back that far." He moved to America from Wuhan, and he was like in the 80s. It was pretty squalor, in terms of all the things he dealt with. And so that episode will either be out or will come out, shortly after this one. So, it really is true that capitalism is this incredible invention of humanity that have lifted literally billions of people out of starvation, out of poverty. And I think that this AI moment is this forcing function to make capitalism much more conscious overall. And that's one of the things I'm super excited about in terms of the time that we're living in right now.
And I would say that the work you're doing with the podcast and the book and all the things that are coming out around the work you're doing is straight down the center exactly what the world needs at this moment. I think if you think about the old expression that the macrocosm is a reflection of the microcosm, we masquerade as this organization that helps companies transform, and the reality is all of our work is helping individuals within companies, the leaders of companies,
right,
transform, because it's the reflection of that and the embodiment of the transformation that individuals have that make conscious companies. It's not something that you can just build outside of changing the leaders within. The work that you're doing and the amazing I can't imagine a better learning track for any human today other than to listen to Love Conquers Fear. Just go back to episode 1 and just start charting through.
Well, thanks.
And you're going to learn what you need to know about where the world is going.
Well, thanks so much. I mean, I'm definitely doing my best. It's, as you know, this is my soul song.
Yeah.
This is the embodiment of my soul and this physicality, and really trying to get humanity to have that heart shift, so that we make it to this age that we can't even imagine today. But we're talking about, the end of disease. We're talking about, food abundance that we can't imagine. We're talking about abundance in places like Chad, where the GDP is $660 a person versus our, 86,000 here in America. They're struggling with just, clean water, electricity, all the basics, housing, healthcare. And we create abundance in a place like Chad. We can create it anywhere in the world. And that's the moment that we're in. And, the book is an incredibly ambitious project. We'll get into the book, but maybe just talking about the conference we have coming up, which I'm super excited about. Let's talk about that. Like your vision for the conference. I know we've collaborated on this a lot.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
And which number is this in terms of how many years is it?
This is our 7th year.
7th year.
We started in 2019.
That's my divine number, right?
And that's your divine number. That's why you're here this year. This is absolutely right.
I didn't know that until this moment. Moment. Yeah. It's so cool.
The conference is the ROI of Y, the WHY. And it really, the intention behind the conference is to bring together people who are invigorated and enlightened by the mindset of putting consciousness into business and to developing conscious leaders And so we have entrepreneurs and emerging leaders. A lot of people from the networks of like YPO and EO attend the conference. And their vision and what they get out of it is this community of like-minded souls that are like on fire about how to use business to make the world more sane and like to improve the status of the world in every way possible. And it really emanated from the first conference was on the heels of the first wave of research we did. I started doing research. I thought I was going to write a book on company culture. This was all the way back to 2013, 14. I did a TEDx talk that had more than 1 million views, was getting all kinds of hits, and people were asking me to speak and talk about company culture. And I thought I was going to write a book on culture. And what I did is I started interviewing companies and their leaders who have been selected by someone as the best place to work. You know, there are hundreds of these different best place to work categories. Sure. And so we got these leaders of those companies and went through a research rubric with them. And we saw these trends just emerging. It was so clear. The data was so clear that we built an entire mindset around them, and that they became the mindsets of the Do More Good movement. And the thing that really makes our conference and our movement unique is that we're not trying to invent or create anything. It's already out there. And the brilliance of John Mackey and Raj and all the people that are part of the conscious capitalism movement, our goal is to get that in front of people. The challenge is not the creation of the systems and the process and the recognition of what needs to be done. The challenge is getting in front of entrepreneurs and business owners and giving them a pathway forward so that they can understand what they need to do to evolve and change. So that's what we focus on, is we're on front lines working with business owners and entrepreneurs, and those aren't always the same thing, as you know. Working with business owners and entrepreneurs, helping them find a path that allows them to evolve their business so that it serves all of the stakeholders. And at the conference, we'll be immersed with not just the speakers and our faculty and our thought leaders that are doing this work. We'll be immersed with other practitioners who are doing this work. Right. People like Maren Oka from Florida, who in the last couple of years has transitioned her company to be entirely employee owned and has changed the lives of dozens and dozens of people. And Carrie Siggins from Stone Age, who led her company to become an ESOP, and her stated goal is to create a path forward where the company can be where the company can be credited with creating 1,000 millionaires. That's her goal. Right. And I just love these kind of people that are doing the work and then sharing, their path and their stories, and that's what we'll be focusing on at the conference.
That's awesome.
Making that all tangible so we can learn how to get there.
Yeah. And Monty Carson is also going to be there too, right?
Gosh, the speaker lineup.
Talk about a great synchronicity that he's on the cover of Forbes now. Just published 48 hours ago. And he'll be speaking for sure. And Omani has been a great steward of the movement. We have the speakers are just remarkable. Stephen Post, if you don't know Stephen Post's work, he's the one that is putting the science behind love and making it accessible for the average business leader in terms of understanding that it's not just a buzzword. It's way more than simply just saying, oh, well, it's this mystical thing that we have to implement. He has, in his keynote, he's going to be sharing the science behind how introducing love into a company's fabric. It's not really so much about making the company more successful. It's about making it possible so that the company cannot fail. Right. And he's got tons of science that backs up how significant love is and can be to the durability and the sustainability and the scalability of a company. It's been my whole career as an entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
Is all about manifesting love. And, shout out to my mom who, got me my first computer at age 7, put that passion in my heart let me do it without prejudice.
Yeah.
Just gave me unconditional love all the way through. Where most people were telling her I was ruining my life, or she was ruining my life, and in not knowing how to do anything else. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's the thematic of this year's conference?
So because the book that you're going to be releasing soon, and because of your focus, that we're actually using Love Conquers Fear.
Awesome.
And then a second tagline of Together We Rise, because it's
Together
about both.
We Rise, yeah.
It's about finding community that helps strengthen us in our resolve to take the steps we need to manifest a different reality for our business and for capitalism.
Yeah. Have you seen the latest cover for the book?
I have. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Awesome.
I can't wait for everyone to see it.
Yeah. It's all about rising together.
It's about rising together.
Well, I'm super excited about it, and I'm super excited to be one of the keynotes there. And this book. This is my third book. It's the first one where I've ever worked with a publisher, and it's a real honor to work with you guys and JD Messenger and Phil and Jorge and the whole team there. Lori is really exceptional. I'll be talking about the book at the conference and really just about the movement. And the arc of the book is one where, obviously I have the introduction, and in the introduction, I talk about the event that you and I met at, and it was the event that you go to annually called GOT, or Game of Titans. And Randy was one of the, Randy Cohen, who's the founder and CEO of Ticket City.
Ticket City, yeah.
Would be even more impressive if it's Ticketmaster.
Yeah.
Randy's such a good friend here in Austin. He actually dropped everything when I was taking Bizarre Voice public to be there with me for the opening of NASDAQ, and that was a moment we'll never forget together. But he invited me to speak, and that was back in May, and it was the first time I had ever given a long format speech of what I called the hard problem of consciousness in this accelerating age of AI, robotics, and quantum computing. And I later added onto that, because of someone at the event, brain-computer interfaces. Because he said, you're really missing on this theme, and this is also going to touch so many things. And he was absolutely right. And he turned me on to this novel. I think it's called More Than the Sun and the Stars by Adam Dorr. And it's about the power of brain-computer interfaces and what could potentially happen with that over this fictional story. But it's a really cool story. I really enjoyed listening to that, and I was like, that's right, I need to pay more attention to that trend. But the thing that really struck me at that conference at MIT was afterwards, after giving this talk for about an hour and a half, which people can actually find on the Love Conquers Fear YouTube channel, and it's referenced in the book as well in the introduction, is that I spent hours talking with people after that. And it really, and the same thing happened in a shorter version of the talk, like a 15-minute version, which is also on YouTube, when I was in Necker, just about a month and a half before, talking about the same thing. Afterwards, people were thanking me for being so open about talking about spirituality. Like, people did not expect that turn from a technologist and a capitalist. Like, there's this dogmatic separation, which I think leads to a lot of suffering in the world, which is completely unnecessary. Like I was talking about consciousness in the opening, and Michael Pollan's new book coming out. You would have been canceled like 10, 20 years ago. Absolutely. Just for saying you wanted to study consciousness, which there's nothing in the human experience without consciousness. And so that was like this light bulb moment for me. And that's where you and I became friends. That was actually the first time we met. And it was just like this instant connection we had. We spent hours talking there, and I'm really thankful of our friendship. And, I had this opportunity with other publishers, but I really wanted to go with someone that gets me that, the synchronicity was already playing out from MIT on, and here we are. So it's a big honor. But at the conference itself, just to talk a little bit about the overall arc of the book, I start out with the introduction. Then chapter 1 is on fear, defining what fear is, what I mean by that, why do we have it, how our brains are wired, how we're constantly being programmed to be in a fear state. That is very much putting profits over people, the antithesis of, conscious capitalism or doing more good through capitalism. And so I basically break that down in a really comprehensive chapter on fear. I mean, I've read lots and lots of books on the soul quest I've been on. I think this is the most comprehensive chapter you'll ever read on fear. And then chapter 2 is on abundance. And what I mean by abundance for all, like why should we believe that that's possible? Then part 2 of the book applies those models to all the biggest problems in the world, from the geopolitical problems that clearly we have around the world that need to be transcended, the problem of healthcare, the problem of education, the problem of climate change and energy, and what are we doing around that? A topic I've talked about a lot on this podcast is the problem of nuclear weapons and warfare, and how are we going to transcend that? And throughout those chapters, I break down like, here's the root of the problem, and here's how we can transcend this. Here's models for us to effectively transcend this and evolve as humanity. We're 99.9% genetically identical all around the world, and we are all one. And I've seen that through psychedelic experiences as well as meditation, and that's part of the insight into it. And all of the spiritual texts talk about that. It doesn't matter if it's the Bible or it's the Tao Te Ching or it's the Bhagavad Gita or Buddhism, etc. That is the actual nature of a reality. And spirituality is infused throughout the entire book, and that leads to part 3 of the book, which is how do we transform? And the chapter that is my personal favorite, everybody's going to have their personal favorite in the book, but my personal favorite is chapter 12 on what is our reality. Because, wow, that was a tough one to write, because it's really the distillation of over 55 books I've read in the last 14 months, really trying to decode what is our reality, which, as you know from my science fiction novella, The Lattice, like even by 2085, we fully haven't decoded it or the nature of God, whatever people want to view as God. I always use that word in Journey, so that is the word that I use. But people could call it that, the great intelligence of the universe or consciousness, whatever it is. It's rooted in love, and it wants us to make it. And then the book, I talk very openly about my own transformation, and then the book concludes with new models for humanity in terms of case studies on why people should believe that we can do it. Because to want humanity to transcend and know that we need this, as I've talked about on this podcast, this is God's final exam for humanity. It's the forcing function to get us to wake up and unify. And I'm 95% certain that we do, and it's really a existential moment for us to do so. Like, we cannot play the zero-sum games with technology as powerful as we're manifesting. We're just barely over 3 years into the launch of ChatGPT. And, Anthropic's even younger than that, Anthropic's Claude. And these models are going from strength to strength to strength. And there's all these moments already happening with AI agents, the Malt book example where people are like, oh my gosh, they're conscious. And it's like, I find that interesting, but I also think, wow, you think so cheaply of human consciousness that you're already, just because these things are good at mimicking consciousness. And, people like Mustafa Suleyman, who is in charge of everything AI at Microsoft and is co-founder of DeepMind, alongside Dimas Sisyphus, who's in charge of everything AI at Google. Mustafa is like talking about the seemingly consciousness moment, like that these are not conscious. They're just great mimicking machines, and they're amazing. I mean, I'm a huge, huge fan of AI. So, the ability for us to manifest abundance has never been more at hand than it is now. And the ability for companies to be much more efficient and creative is incredible. Like there's a lot of knowledge that needs to be unpacked on that point, and I've unpacked a lot of that knowledge on the podcast. And I'm also doing a workshop at the conference.
Yeah, I was going to ask, would you dig a little deeper in the workshop?
Stephen Post is doing one too, right?
And Stephen Post is doing one as well. But I'd love to hear more about like the application of this and how you're going to construct the workshop.
Yeah, the workshop is really cool. This is the first of its kind I'm doing. Really the event itself is a book launch of sorts, for me, at least personally. And for you guys as the publisher. And, the workshop itself is unpacking two sides of the love conquers fear theme. The first is for us as leaders to allow love to conquer fear in our companies. We have to do that inner journey ourselves. Like if we are broken, then that brokenness gets translated in the company. And so I'm going to unpack a lot of ways that I've done that, a lot of journeys that I've been on, from studying Vedanta to all type. And that was a long time ago for me, really made a mark on me. It was a YPO trip, actually, where I went to study under Swamiji Parthasarathi right outside of Pune in India. And Vedanta is really this practice where it's all about gaining mastery over the mind, that the mind left ungoverned is like a child, it constantly worry about the past, constantly be anxious about the future, and you'll just completely miss the only moment that matters, which is this present moment right here, the eternal present. And so I'm going to talk about like what that journey has been like for me, how, for me, psychedelics have been a tool. For a lot of people, meditation has been a tool. I also meditate. And so really in the workshop, lead by example. But the big thing is get other people talking about how they've allowed love to conquer their fear. Because if we just looked at it as an inner journey individually, and every human being had the inner journey that allowed them to conquer their own fear and manifest more love in the world, I would be 100% certain we're going to make it.
Yeah.
Like then we make it. And we've talked about that on this podcast. One of the great episodes on that topic was episode 11 with one of my best friends, Byron Reese, a great author.
That was a great episode.
On the path to utopia. Like he's 100% certain we make it, right? And he talks a lot about just everyday acts of kindness. Part 2 of the workshop is going to be specifically then, how do you help others do that? And as an entrepreneur now, since I was 24, and as someone who has built 6 companies, all of which the ones that I raised money for which have been the last 3, have been named best places to work over and over again. The most successful to date was Bazaar Voice, which had over $1 billion IPO and was rated the #1 company in Austin when it was small, then medium, then large. I think it's the only company in Austin's history
to get all 3 categories.
To win all 3 of those categories. And you could just feel the love in the company. And there were very specific things that I did there that carried on into Data.World, which was named a best place to work every year since its inception, all the way up until the acquisition by ServiceNow, which is also one of the top-rated places to work, which that was acquired on 7/7, my divine number. There were just so many acts at Bazaar Voice that I'm gonna talk about at the conference and at Data.World. But, sometimes it was really small things. It was introducing books like Tribes by Seth Godin. When that book came out, I read it and I thought, wow, this is a phenomenal read for every employee. And there was a part of me, to be honest with you, that felt a little bit uncomfortable with it. Mm-hmm. And that was because of fear. Like there was this, essentially it was about trusting your people to do the right thing and trusting them to create tribes that would benefit the company.
Yeah.
And so what I thought, hey, this discomfort is actually like a really good thing for me to overcome and introduce this book into the culture. So I said to everybody in the company, hey, I've read this amazing book. I'd love to get together and discuss it. For anybody that would like to read it with me, please, respond. We'll get you a copy of the book and you'll be a part of this workshop we'll do together. And the workshop itself, a lot of the cultural standard bearers showed up. It was about 30 people. And at that time, if you had asked me to handpick the people that really set the cultural tone at Bizarre Voice, it was those people. And they got so much out of the book. My main job there was to more be a facilitator, and have them tell stories about the book. And I waited until the end because I didn't want to overlay and say, well, here are all the things. I didn't want to set the tone in that way. I didn't want to be the CEO that said, well, here's what I got out of it, and then them feel this need to mimic me or anything like that. And so I waited until the very end, and I said, okay, full disclosure, this is why I wanted you to read this book. I said, first of all, I just got a lot more out of the book from all your comments. I said, secondly, I would love for you to act on the mantra in the book. Start your tribes. I trust you to do it, with full respect in the company. And don't even ask your manager. Like this is not something where you ask for permission. You're in a different type of company. This is not a big company where you have to be fearful of asking for permission. And my bet is that you doing that will create a much better culture for the company. This is back when we were about maybe 100 people. We grew to be 850 people by the time of IPO. And I said, I bet you that there will be situations in this talent war where at a minimum, it'll be the reason people join us. Oh my gosh, that was so right. There was just like so many clubs that got started, these tribes. There was like a wakeboarding club. They would meet in the morning at 5 a.m. because the lake in Austin was totally glassy then, and then they'd get to work, around 7:30 or so after having like a beautiful start to the day. And just on and on and on. And part of the way I encouraged it even more as a CEO is I would show up at like there was the art tribe, and they had art shows that would start right after work, right around 6 p.m. or so. And I just went in. I've always been very appreciative of great art. I'm not someone that can do that myself. Although I can do it better now with AI.
It makes it a lot better.
But I would go into these and I truly was just blown away by the creativity. And I would walk around to every piece and just very authentically talk about how amazed I was about these pieces. And that set this tone where it's like even more, of these types of tribes started. And so I can tell a lot of stories like that at the workshop, and I will. But again, the point is to get more people telling those types of stories. So we're gonna have breakouts where people really get together and share those types of stories, and then get people to tell the best of, so that we all learn from each other, and ultimately start to create this movement of love conquering fear, because it's every spiritual tradition. It is the reality that we're actually in, is that, in Christianity, it's the kingdom of God is found within. but that's, I'm Jewish, like tikkun olam. I mean, it's all through all the religions. It's all the same, that this is the way that humanity transcends. And so doing this at Do More Good, it's going to be a real honor to do. And I'm sure we'll learn a lot from that workshop. I'm sure we'll manifest a lot of love. And as a result, people will walk out of there with a tremendous amount of energy and ideas about how to be better leaders. And frankly, a really much more whole human being. Because one of the things that I've noticed, I'm sure you would agree with this because I know you've walked a spiritual path as well, is the more you walk that path individually, you can't imagine the level of happiness that gives you. That is the kingdom of God is found within.
Absolutely.
And as a result, there's just so many things in my life that I really bare my soul in my book, that have just fallen away from me, that just don't have any power over me anymore. Like, I've never been an alcoholic, but I just don't have interest, Yeah. And that came from the spiritual path. I mean, for me, it was not something I was looking for, because again, I don't have an addictive type of personality. And alcoholism is something that is a genetic, like actual issue for people, which is tough to transcend. But I've never had that type of thing. But it was, for me, that actually came out of a journey. Like, it was in this journey where I was looking down at myself, and the words that came out of my mouth, it was only 10 seconds of like being in a journey for 3.5 to 4 hours, said, you have an important mission. You're just poisoning yourself. You don't need this socially anymore. And man, that just totally killed the taste for me.
Yeah. And it was the inherent wisdom that already lived in your cell and in your
lived in my soul, at least. Yeah, definitely. Which is also you, right? There's the kind of the ego self, and then there's the soul self. Has been talked about in so many books, including the Bhagavad Gita. So I'm super excited about the whole conference, and even more special for me to learn that it's number 7.
Number 7. Yeah. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
And thank you for bringing your perspective and your wisdom and the embodiment of what you have been building and sharing it with others. We need more conscious leaders who are willing to step forward and share these stories of how they are connecting with the greater wisdom that exists in the world, without the repercussion of fear or judgment. And your leadership in that area has had a big influence on my life.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
In terms of just what I share and what I'm comfortable with.
Yeah. Well, thank you for putting the soul in Do More Good in the first place. For starting it. I'm honestly really looking forward to learning from each other in this workshop, as well as just the broad event, really being a part of that community. It's going to be, it will incredible for everybody.
It will likely be the ROI of Y conference this year, in May 27th through the 29th, by the way. It will likely be...
We'll put a link in here for people to sign up as well.
It will likely be the only stage in the world this year where you will have leaders from Conscious Capitalism, from B Labs, the organization that creates certified B corporations.
Yeah, my last company was a B Corp.
Yep, same. The company that I founded and ran for many years is a certified B Corp. It'll have Kate Williams, the CEO of 1% for the Planet, will be there, and of course Timothy Henry of Conscious Capitalism. And also the leaders that really created legislation around creating benefit corporations, which is now passed in 37 states. It's still a growing movement.
I remember when it passed in Texas.
Yep.
I was involved with one of the representatives in that.
It takes leaders like you to drive those kind of initiatives forward.
Well, it's primarily her, just to be. There's Representative Gina Hinojosa who she approached us and thought it was very interesting that here we were, serial entrepreneur. Bizarre Boys had a $1 billion IPO, and I was creating a tech company that's a B Corp, and she's like, this should have been in Texas, right? And so we were. Our general counsel, actually, Ariane Chan, she was one that testified in the Texas House and got passed.
Yeah,
but it was shout out to her.
Yeah, all of the state lawmakers that have driven the benefit corporation statutes forward, I have so much respect and appreciation and admiration for. Yeah, because it took a lot to get it passed in states like Texas and others where. The conservative viewpoint is often an obstacle to getting anything that looks and feels anything less than certain. Anything that comes across as woo-woo or mystical or there's a lot of optics that exist around the whole mindset of a doom-ordered company, a company that exists to elevate humanity. People outside of that look into it and think that it's mostly optics or positioning. But those that are doing it the right way, that is not the case.
Right. Texas is, I'm born and raised here in Austin, and the person that really put the soul in Austin, in my opinion, at least in my lifetime, was Willie Nelson. There's the Tao of Willie. He early on would just set the tone. My first ever concert was 4 years old, going to see Willie Nelson's Backyard Barbecue.
That was your first concert? That's amazing.
Yeah. It's the first time I smelled marijuana, too. Because I was like telling my parents, I was like, what is that smell?
What is that smell? Yeah.
And it did not smell good to me at all.
No.
But it was all over that Backyard Barbecue. Even back then, he was a big proponent for it. But he really put that heart of, in Austin, we lift each other up. He would say, look, it doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat, like we're all here to just have a beer and, talk about all the things we have in common, which I think is actually the reality for most of America. It's just we're constantly programmed to think it's not, because the algorithms and social media and the media are really amplifying the extremes, because that's what gets the clicks in a 24/7 cycle, and it's algorithmic hijacking, which I talk about very clearly in the book in the fear chapter. But we as a state, like, we do care a lot about capitalism in the state. And one of the things our governor brags about a lot is we have more Fortune 500 companies headquartered here now than any other state. So we surpassed California on that front. And the other thing, which is incredible, and I would have never predicted, is, is in our house, that not that long ago, Governor Perry was over here with Brian Hubbard for the Americans for Ibogaine initiative, which Deborah and I have become donors and proponents for, and it passed in Texas initially after being shunned, believe it or not, in Kentucky, where Brian Hubbard is from, with $50 million of funding to research Ibogaine to save these vets. And the efficacy so far on Ibogaine is that over 80% of the time, it will save a suicidal vet with one dose.
With one dose,
although these are like really powerful psychedelics. I've never done Ibogaine, but it's the most powerful one. It will save someone that is an alcoholic. We touched on alcoholism earlier. Like, they will not be an alcoholic anymore, or an opioid addict. So it really seems like this miracle drug. And it was a conservative that came up with that. Politically, I'm an independent, always have been. I find that I like to have that freedom to really make up my own mind and not kind of dogmatically subscribe to a political tribe.
Yes.
To have that freedom to move about, because there's a lot of centrist on both sides that are really attractive. And I've been involved in APAC and other things over the years, which bring centrists together. No labels I've also been involved with. But, Texas, it's a complex place. I mean, it does have some of these benefits, but then there are things where I'm just like, I can't believe this is happening.
If somebody would have told, I've had the honor and pleasure of sitting with Governor Perry and Brian as well, and had a conversation. And if you interact with Brian and aren't ready to run through a wall, there's something wrong. He is a brilliant motivator and speaker, and to have someone with
he's amazing.
Amazing. And the
he's
history
going to be on this podcast.
Oh, fantastic. I can't wait to hear that episode.
Yeah.
And just to have, like, I would say arguably the most conservative governor in the history of Texas being the biggest champion of this. It is a tale of the times.
Yeah. But I definitely don't want to say by any stretch we're perfect in Texas. I mean, the anti-trans laws, I just can't even believe that's happening here, because this state has always been about liberty. And it really means liberty for all. For all. Is what it's supposed to mean. And the fact that so many rights are being infringed on is very anti-liberty. So it's complex.
Still let's say it's complex. Yet to do, no question.
Yeah. So transitioning, let's talk about this AI moment, because this AI moment is something that obviously I'm obsessing about with the book. I received a very divine download in terms of this moment and what humanity needs to do to ultimately embrace abundance for all. And, it's a tall order. I mean, it's a tall order. Like I've laid out, quite a few times now that the scarcity that we have dealt with as Homo sapiens, we've been around for 300,000 years on a 4.54 billion year old planet. So evolutionarily, we're very, very much a blip in time. And I can't even imagine, what Homo sapiens would be like 300,000 years from now, much less 100 years from now. But we have only had electricity for 0.1% of our evolutionary time. So the amygdala in our brain is a very well-developed fear center to really make us pay attention to the things that could harm us. And it's constantly, hijacked. And as a result of that, we have a lot of dogmatic separation of things, whether it's political parties, which we touched on, whether it's men and women, whether it's different races of people, different countries versus each other, different religions versus each other, like people arguing about the nature of God, and ignoring the fact that there's this common spiritual root that ties all of the traditions.
A thread that weaves through all of them.
Yes, which I think is where the truth lies, right? I know you're passionate about that topic too. So, how do you kind of see this AI moment playing out, having been a capitalist now for a long time?
Yeah, I am firmly ensconced in my belief that humans are going to figure this out, that we are resilient, dynamic, magnificent creatures that are going to figure out this major transition that we have to go through. I think it's going to be very painful, and there will be big losses and lots of destruction in ways that we probably don't even understand at the moment. But at the end of it all, I am firm in my belief that humanity will win, and that we will have abundance for all.
Yep.
And that and I will say, just from my own experiences of really experiencing what it is to be in a mental state through meditation, through breath work, and through plant medicine. I have basked in the beautiful light of all that is, and connected with it directly. And I remember the very first time that I did plant medicine. It was about 5 years ago for me, and prior to that,
was right around 5 years ago for me.
About the same, very similar paths. Prior to that, I was the example. I was the guy that never would have considered doing anything. I literally waited until I turned of age to have my first drink of alcohol. And I was 50 years old and had never had a single drug, never been drunk from alcohol, and because I had this incessant need to be in control.
Right.
And it was my surrender to that control that allowed me to have my first experience. And all I could say, because my very first experience in plant medicine was a very intentional protocol. Lots of intentions go into it, guided under medical supervision, and all of the things in place. Because that's what made me feel comfortable and confident. And all I could say for the first 30, 45 minutes is, there is truth. There is truth. And I, for whatever reason, cussed like a sailor. Holy shit, there is truth. And what was going on in my mind was so clear, like the point that you raised, that, we are genetically nearly identical.
Right. Every
human on this planet, not to mention the other creatures that are on this planet along with us. And all I could see and experience was this direct connection and it was so clear and so apparent that we are all connected in every way possible. And it wasn't even possible to envision, when I was in the space, a contrarian viewpoint, at least for me, like how like hate did not exist in this space. It was just love for all.
That's where our souls exist.
That's where we exist. No question.
There's divinity within us all. I've seen that.
Absolutely, 1,000%. And the ability for these protocols that are being done, the ones that are being done in the right way with intention, I have the capacity to change the perspective and to change the way that we humans connect with one another, the way we live our lives.
Right.
And something you said earlier, around embodiment. This is my big journey. It's like, okay,
that's my theme for this whole year. It's all about embodiment.
That's my theme too.
Yeah. Really.
I stated that as my theme in January, is embodiment.
Cool. That's really.
And I'm
cool.
doing
I always think of my theme at the end of the year, and then eventually announce it. And my theme for 2025 was all about the inner journey, and 2026 is all about embodiment.
I'm right there with you on that track.
Another synchronicity.
Synchronicity. So I'm doing something that I never in a million years would have thought that I would do, the embodiment part. In just a couple of days from now, I'm getting on a plane. I'm flying to Tulum, Mexico, and I've registered to become a certified practitioner in Lomi Lomi massage.
Okay, interesting.
And so my entire life, I've enjoyed massage. I enjoy kitty massage. I feel like transformative in the body.
Yeah.
And my wife does as well. We love traveling where they have great spas where you can go and have great experiences. And my whole life, I have been disconnected from my body until the plant medicine experience. Or at least I can see it now. I didn't see it before. And I've been so focused on being present, and the mindset of just being hyper aware, because with awareness, there is choice,
right?
And with choice comes responsibility.
Yep.
And as we heighten our connection to all that is, in the divine world we live in, that responsibility to be a flag bearer for the light and for the good becomes more and more compounded over time. So I've gotten to this point where I need to figure out how to do more with my hands and my embodiment. And my father and my son are incredibly skilled with tools. They could to take any piece of furniture apart and reassemble it in no time.
Right.
It skipped me.
So that definitely skipped me too. But I don't know if you know this, but my parents, they were entrepreneurs since the time almost since the time I was born. I mean, since the time I had any memories of anything that I can recall. I always had known them as entrepreneurs, and they were entrepreneurs initially with furniture stores.
Amazing.
Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
So my dad was constantly, working on furniture, hauling furniture, repairing furniture. He used to have this. He instilled humility in me early on, because a lot of times when he would come pick me up at school, he was yelling out "junk for sale," like with all his furniture.
Furniture heats over the back. Yeah,
right in his truck.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So the mindset of embodiment and just being able to just be present and work with my hands is something that, and it's a test. I have no prior experience other than receiving massages. I've never given a massage other than to my, wife.
Yeah.
And so it's a test for myself.
That's cool.
To see how I can allow myself to just drop into a place where I can just be fully embodied in my experience, and I believe it's going to help me tremendously in the work that I do.
Well, and it
so
says a
many
lot
other
about
ways.
you. I mean, it's to give someone else a massage is an act of love. It's like you want to be able to practice that act even more.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I didn't know you were going to do that. That's awesome.
I haven't told, other than my wife. You're and whoever's listening to this is the first time I've shared that.
Yeah.
My kids didn't even know, but they're going to find out after watching this. So to come back to your question, this experience that I've had, and now had multiple times with people that I have deep connection and relationship with, especially my wife, who is a goddess that walks the earth. I become so deeply aware of how fortunate I am. I used to say, when people would comment all the time to me, like, Jay, you and your wife, my wife is named Tanya, and people comment on our relationship. This is, from the beginning. We've been, married 18 years and together a few more than that. And over and over and over again, people say, I'm so jealous of your relationship. You guys have such a great relationship and all the things. I used to say, I'm really lucky. I'm just so lucky that I found her, that we found each other. But my journey has, what's happened is, in the plant medicine work that I've done, I've completely shifted the way I approach it. I no longer consider myself lucky. I consider myself deserving. And that shift for me, of stepping into my own power and my own empowerment in the brightest and best way possible, with humility, and not with ego. It's allowed me to be the partner for her that she's always needed, but I didn't really know how to be before plant medicine. The connection that it's brought us, just being in these spaces together, words do not do justice to what we have experienced coming together. And so this experience for me has led me down a path of this crazy mindset of abundance around where we humans are headed, and my belief and our ability to get there. Yeah.
When you use the word crazy, but the reality is it's our destiny, right? And
it is our destiny.
It's what I've seen that God wants for us, and that God really wants us to make it to this time, and that once we make it to this time, we get access to the rest of the universe. And that's what the lattice is about, is love conquering fear throughout space and time. And that, the part of, this is a sad theory. I don't subscribe to it, but it's a theory. Part of the theory about Fermi's paradox on why have we not seen aliens? Why are there, some people say we have, I never have, but like, why have we not seen aliens? And we must be alone in this vast universe of incomprehensible, infinity, as far as we know, like, hundreds and hundreds of billions of just galaxies. Just a galaxy alone is like hard to comprehend.
It's so hard to comprehend.
Right, just how big that is. And, we're learning more and more through the James Webb Telescope. But, this this destiny of abundance, we're so kind of landlocked in terms of planet Earth and the way that we look at things, and then we're constantly programmed to think scarcely.
Yes.
And that is about keeping us in kind of this mental trap where it is about putting profits over people or countries over each other. And it's all that zero-sum, fear-based mindset that has never had to be our destiny. One of the things you said earlier, which I just want to unpack, is that part of the reason I'm doing this is so there's less pain. And as Chris Beisch would say, that was an amazing episode. That was episode 36, one of my favorite books. I've read this book twice, and some parts 3 times. It's LSD and the Mind of the Universe, with the subtitle Diamonds from Heaven. Is that we're in this gestation process right now, and we're birthing the future human. Like chapters 9 through 11 of that book are just amazing. And I would really highly recommend people watch that episode. It was incredible to have him here in the house. He's like so deeply rooted in humility and just such a spiritual, beautiful soul. And, the gestation doesn't have to be that hard. There are hard pregnancies and there are easier pregnancies. And for this, we need to have an easier gestation period. And we need to realize that the embrace of love over fear and all of the things we can do together as capitalists, as leaders, it really matters. Like, this time really matters. The very intentional actions that people take that are making these AI models matter, and if open source really is the destiny for AI, which I think it is, the DeepSeek R1 moment was an incredible moment, which led to $1 trillion loss in NASDAQ the next week. I think that it's pretty obvious that open source is going to win, which means that the vast majority of humanity is going to have access to not just artificial general intelligence, but then eventually artificial superintelligence. And so it's one of those with great power comes great responsibility moments for almost everybody on the planet. And that's why it's a forcing function.
Yeah, it is a
forcing function to make the right choice. And so I think the way my thesis on the way this is going to play out, like, nobody has a crystal ball. Like, I remember Jeremiah Owang on episode 21 of the podcast back when I was attending TED AI, and he was the closing keynote. He said that, Reid Hoffman, who's his partner on the Blitzscaling Fund, alongside Chris Ye, that Reid Hoffman himself can't see beyond 2 to 3 years. Right? So talk about legendary investor. But I think the way it's going to happen is that we're going to be able to see, like, we're looking over the horizon, we're going to be able to see abundance for all. We're going to be able to see the end of disease. We're going to be able to see, energy abundance that we can't even imagine, where desalinization is going to be all over the world. We're not going to have a water issue anymore. We're going to have robots that will be able to build all the critical infrastructure we need in any country, powered by the sunlight, just on and on and on. That's going to happen, and you're in my lifetime, like in the next probably 10 to 15 years, that we're going to have that. And the human drive for not extincting ourselves and for conquering the scarcity mindset is going to lead us to make the right choice. And it's going to happen both bottoms up and tops down. And it's hard to imagine because, I'm Jewish.
It's impossible to
We've
imagine,
had the Holocaust. I mean, there's all these things that have happened throughout history that are really atrocious. One of the things I was thinking about when you're talking about your grandmother, which is incredible. Like, I love that story. And Deborah has a great aunt, whereas the same story. She lived to be over 100 years old.
Wow.
Her husband died early. She took over the business. It was actually a furniture business, and ended up running it till she was over 100 years old. It's like total, you and I have so many parallel stories kind of blowing my mind. But you know, it wasn't that long ago in the United States that women couldn't even have checking accounts. That was in the late 70s.
It was in the 70s.
That was in the late 70s. It was a bit over 100 years ago that women had the right to vote, but there was an asterisk on that. It was only white women.
Yeah.
It took 50 years
Another
more
50 years
for women of color. And one of the chapters in the book actually is on the objectification of women and how this suffering over the millennia of that root. I actually think the punching down on trans, I actually think it comes out of that root.
Comes from that.
Like it comes from that. But you know, this technology forcing function, I think, you know, you and I have seen, I think you would agree with this, at least I've seen this through journeys, that, you know, we're all part of God, or we're all one, you know, whatever you want to call that, or we're all part of consciousness. And therefore the divine is working through us. Like, I've been divinely guided my whole life. One of the other cool synchronicities we have is in the first journey I did, the first soul I encountered was my mom. And I relived all that love and selfless love she gave me. And she took me in that journey to the second soul, which was my wife. And she showed me that I had married my soulmate and married the best parts of her. And that actually I was healing something that I always wanted for her through my wife. And that was that my sister Brandy and I always said to our mom, like, please do something for yourself. Like, you just do so much for us. Like, just take a trip for yourself. And she never would.
Yeah.
She was totally selfless. And it was back when Deborah and I, when we got married, I had $1,000, she had $2,000. But when we, you know, came into money by being entrepreneurs, and it took a long time. It took us a long time to do that. Many years. It was at that point where I'm like, look, travel the world. Like, I'll be there with you for some of these trips, but you're free, you know, roam around the world. And the first trip without me was a little bit weird. And people might think, listening to this, well, why would I want my wife to take a trip without me? Well, you know, if you love someone, set them free, right?
Yeah.
Who said that, Sting? It's really, it was an act of love. And I learned from that journey that ultimately that was it. That's like an act of love and trust, like that I know that this is the right thing to do. And she now has been profiled by Backroads, which is one of our favorite travel companies.
We travel with Backroads
she's done
a lot.
24 Backroads trips
Wow.
at this point. She's been doing this for a long time. But the first one was like really awkward. She felt guilty. Second one was easier. By the third one, it was like, you know, hey, I'm off and going, right? And I'm just so happy that that's the case. But it was in that journey, you know, where ultimately I saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these acts of love, and, you know, part of the reason that marriages don't make it is fear. Like, that people are fearful of, like, what the other person's going to do when they're not around and all this ridiculousness.
Yeah.
Versus treating them with complete trust and love.
Yeah. The same things, fear, scarcity, and ego, are present in, it's kind of, it's in the human DNA
Right.
And we have to lift ourselves out of that world in order to be able to get to where it is that we aspire to be.
Yeah.
And it's present in relationships and in companies.
Yeah.
And we create these systems, whether they're relationship systems and how we interact, or in a business, the systems that make the business work, that are largely based on fear and scarcity and ego.
Yeah.
And then we wonder why we have unhappy relationships or not effective businesses. It's the same cycle.
What do you think about this? Do you have any opinion on this, the latest generation? You know, Christopher Faish, he said, when the going gets tough, God sends in the best troops. And he and I were kind of riffing on that. But I'm really bullish on this.
I am bullish as well.
Yeah.
So for 40 years, when I was in high school, I got elected to serve on my high school student council.
Yeah.
And my penance was I had to go to leadership camp and learn how to, be a student council.
Yeah.
And I thought it was the world's worst, thing. And I went to this camp 4 nights, 5 days. It changed my life. Completely redirected everything I thought I knew about myself and about leadership. Learned how to be a servant leader. And I joined the staff of this organization that next summer. So I have been leading my own group of students through this process of self-discovery and learning for 40 years. Every summer, I go back to this workshop and I take in my group. And
talk about an act of selfless service.
Well,
it's a long time to stick with it.
I get so much more out of it than I've ever put into it. But the reason I'm sharing that here is I've been a firsthand witness to the evolution of our young people. I have literally sat as they cry, as they emote, as they struggle, and I have to, I take them aside and work with them on things. I've watched this evolution of 14 to 16-year-olds, and I've seen where it's gone over the years, and there's so many things that these young people, because we look at them and we see their addiction to technology or to TikTok or whatever, and we after COVID, what happened to their ability to socialize and connect with other people. We see this from the outside, but at the core, I think these young people that are coming in, coming online into society right now, are better equipped to deal with what's coming than any of us possibly realize. And I've been right there in the front row with it. Yeah, and I'm so excited. They lack certain characteristics and things that I had growing up, because I didn't have technology. I didn't have, you go out and you come home when the street lights go off, and that was, my life. And I didn't have a tether. I didn't have the phone, to find my way around. And so we often, or I find my peers often, look back and think, well, that was a far better way to live. And it probably was, but the ability for young people today to connect with what's possible because of what they've experienced firsthand with AI, their exposure to all things. A young kid, a 15-year-old growing up today knows Chad. They know of the country. They've probably seen a video of somebody from Chad. When I was growing up, I would have had to go pull out my Encyclopedia Britannica and find the C version, and then go through and.
I write in the book that I knew nothing about it, and so literally while I'm in the Uber with the driver Kalabu, who is there, and I'm learning all about him, and we're just flowing. He's just like a beautiful, beautiful human being. I'm using ChatGPT to learn about Chad and asking him questions, and we're connecting like right in the moment. But I was, I'm around your age, right? So like we both grew up. But yeah, you're right. This generation's so much more worldly, and their alcohol use is plummeting. They're much, although we lament about TikTok and their social media use or whatever, that's starting to decline. They're kind of like Neo in the Matrix. So we're not going to take this constructed reality where you guys have put profits over people. Like, we're going to demand conscious capitalism, and that's coming online at the same time.
And the rate of change that is coming, I think, because I sincerely believe, even though you and I are far more likely to really understand that than most people, just because of how deep we've gone into the rabbit hole around all these things than most humans, but. What's coming, the rate of change and how it's going, how fast it's going to go. I don't think any human really truly gets the exponential change that's coming. But I think that our young people are being set up in a very good way to be able to shift the way that they move through the world at the rate of change that's coming, far better equipped than most of us, in our 50s, 60s, 40s, in business today. It's going to be remarkable.
One of the things with this AI moment, I'm just curious if you see it this way, and if your journeys have given you any insight into this, or meditations, or any other way. you got there. I think that this AI moment and the consciousness awakening, this kind of deep curiosity about consciousness, whether it's, Dan Brown, which think about the megaphone he has, or Michael Pollan. I mean, I was looking, I pre-ordered the book and it's one of the books I've been looking most forward to. And it says the most anticipated book of the year from the New York Times, as well as Penguin Random House, right? Big publisher.
Yeah.
And, it's really going to kind of set the tone for this year. But I think the consciousness awakening, the rise in psychedelic use, very intentionally directed. I completely agree with that. That's the only way that I would even use it. I actually don't use psychedelics at all at parties.
Yeah.
Maybe this won't make me popular or be invited to parties, but I actually will leave a party if it goes there.
I totally understand this.
I'm like it's very sacred to me. It's a very sacred connection with the divine. I get really transcendent messages, and it's something that I take very, very seriously and with extreme reverence.
Yes.
But all these things kind of happening at the same time, to me, just feels undeniably like the divine is working through us to wake us up for this moment.
And there's no question. And those of us that again move through the world with a learner's mindset, rather than a knower's mindset, that are open to receiving what's out there and what's available. We have to, and there's more and more of us all the time. I come across people that operate as learners more and more all the time.
Yeah.
I think we have a responsibility to carry that card and to share it and to be open, with our experiences. That's what's going to make it possible for humanity to not just survive but to thrive.
Right.
Is those of us that are willing to step forward and
be authentic.
Share that experience in an authentic way.
Yeah, and that's I talked about this on episode 30 with John Mackey, but huge shout out to him for opening up his book, The Whole Story, with his psychedelic journey. Chapter 1 of that book that got him over the fear to launch Whole Foods.
Yeah,
he saw that everything is rooted in love and deep connection, and that source is one, and that got him to that point. So I think it's really exciting this is happening. One of the things that I've thought really deeply about, part 1 of the lattice actually came through a journey, is that these brain-computer interfaces are actually the connection point, I think, as we have this exponential curve to actually scientifically codify what our reality is. It's one thing to, be a part of a spiritual tradition, whether that's a religion or not, and, believe in the fundamental nature of consciousness or source or or God, whatever you want to call that. In the Torah, source is actually a capital S. It's a proper noun. It's a whole nother thing to experience that. And so in part 1 of the lattice, the protagonist, Dr. Alexander Bliss, has this crazy idea where after his psychedelic experience, which he thinks is going to be nothing but neurochemical tricks, and he's like, oh my gosh, like everything's connected, everything's rooted in love. He has this idea to hook up some of the most incredible spiritual masters, psychonauts, meditators, to find out the commonality in their experiences. And it's by the year 2030 where quantum computing is projected to be stable by 2029. And if people haven't read The Lattice, by the way, they can get it for free on the podcast on episode 27.
I would suggest to people listen to the episode that you posted to get the backstory and some of the context.
The backstory is kind of fun.
It's brilliant.
Because the quantum computer in The Lattice that Dr. Alexander Bliss uses is actually a real one that Japan's working on right now.
Yeah.
That's supposed to come online by then. But he uploads all the data of their experiences, because we've gotten to the resolution of brain-computer interfaces by that point where you can literally see what people are experiencing, and looks for the common patterns, and that's where it finds, hey, there's this fundamental aspect of everything's rooted in this connection and this love, and that transforms humanity. But one of the things that I am super excited about is I really do believe we're going to be able to decode more and more of our reality as we progress, and I think that's fantastic. Like people right now are thinking, I think, too limited with AI. The first thought I think people have is like, it can increase efficiency. Yes, it can definitely do that. I've always thought of it as it's going to shatter the barrier to creativity. Yes, it's doing that. Like I said, I can't draw, but I can draw. And so many things. I constantly am learning every day from it. But it also is going to decode like aspects of science that we just don't know. On the episode I had with Peter Wang, he is like deeply, deeply rooted in science. Like, definitely spent a lot of time studying physics, leads one of the unicorns here in Austin, one of the most prominent AI companies with Anaconda. And it was funny in that episode, like I said to Peter, Peter, my guess is that we have decoded maybe 2 to 3% of what scientifically is available to decode.
Yeah.
And he said, Brett, I think it's less than 1%.
Less than 1.
And I was like, okay, right.
Yeah.
So, we don't even know what 96% of the universe is made of. We just call it dark energy and dark matter.
Dark matter, yeah.
Yeah. So how do you think about that? I mean, it seems super exciting.
In one of my experiences, I went deep down this rabbit hole, and what I ended up doing after really contemplating and thinking about, because I used to think of myself as a seeker. Yeah. And I've stopped thinking of myself as a seeker, and I have now resigned to the belief that I'm not ever going to know all of the answers of the things that I truly want to know, like what is life, why are we here, and all the questions that we ask. And I'm so much more dialed in to just being present and living and expressing and bringing more people to the light in the purest and most humble way you possibly can. And I'm not as caught up in trying to figure out the mystical nature of our being. And that transition for me has been, it's just felt magnificent.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's really coming back to my focus of the year, which is embodiment.
Right.
And that's what I'm focused on. And I'm now completely comfortable with the belief that I may go to the end of my life. In fact, it's likely that I will, without knowing all the answers to the mystical, creation of the universe and humans and all that is. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that that's probably inevitable because, Chris Beisch couldn't decode our reality fully after 73 high-dose LSD sessions, of which are so high-dose, I've never even taken one of those sessions.
Yeah.
Like we're talking about, 8.5 to 9 hour journeys that are like so intense. But, he lived to tell the tale, and he was willing to die to understand the nature of reality. And it was on his last journey where he saw that there is no end to trying to decode.
And that's like the experiences I've had is this endless, infinite like number of unfolding where it's like every human I've come in contact with in my life like appears before me, and they zoom in, and then there's this, and then it unfolds, and then there's another layer, and then another layer, and it's infinite. I mean, it never ends.
Yeah.
And the nature of infinity to me when I'm in these spaces and when I've had these experiences has led me back down to this place of presence over expansion.
Yeah.
And it's a really beautiful place to be.
Yeah. Well, back to there's no moment like the present.
There's no moment like the present.
You know, you actually, I don't know if you remember this, but you introduced me to 11 Days in May.
I did, yeah.
By JD Messenger. And that was a super fun two-part episode 24 on the podcast, where we spent a lot of time actually decoding fear and how to transcend fear. That was a part 2 of it. It was super, super fun to do that together. And I'm curious, like, you know, you recommended that to me after I gave that talk at MIT. What other books would you recommend? You know, I'm always looking for Jay's recommendations on the next books to read. Like, which ones have moved you in the last 6 months?
The oh gosh,
or you know, in the past.
What? So my path for the last year, well, since we met in May, has just been kind of going down the list of the books that you so passionately advocate for.
Yeah. Episode 1 was a big unpacking.
Yeah, it was like
of this podcast.
And so I made a list and I ordered those, and I've been going through them. And there's so many, but to me, the quintessential work is going, you know, just all the way back to the more ancient texts.
Yeah.
The Bhagavad Gita and the Tao Te Ching. And there's something that happens to me when I'm in the right frame of mind when I go back into those, and I've read them over and over and over again. And those are the books that feed me the most, and just having the every 6 months I'll go back to them and just kind of reacquaint myself with, because they have the most timeless principles.
Absolutely.
And it's really where the seed was planted for me, and this belief that every religion that has ever been created in the history of humanity, I believe, was created by humans that had a psychedelic experience going back thousands of years. And, you know, we now can trace the ergot in the vats in the basement of the Vatican and everywhere else.
That's the book, The Immortality Key.
The Immortality Key was
Brian
one.
Rescue.
Yeah, and
you know,
Brian,
he's going to be on the podcast.
I'm excited. Brian's fantastic.
He's a great guy. Yeah,
he's a great guy. But the Immortality Key, you know, was a big moment for me in terms of taking what I'd learned from these ancient texts and really thinking about it in a modern day. This belief that every religion was created by humans that had a transcendental experience in plant medicine, and then they come out of the medicine and they verbalize, they talk about it, they share, and then humans kind of, we lay on our own dogma, and and eventually
the ego comes back online.
The ego comes back online.
Like, hey, let's put a little control mechanism on this.
Yeah. And you know, we could argue all day about whether or not religion has been, you know, good or negative for humanity, and I think lots of people would have lots of arguments in all directions. But just the mere recognition that this is, it just makes total common sense that this is where, you know, religion has come from. And so going back to those more ancient texts is my answer to that question. I continue to return to them over and over again. And I just reread Immortality Key too a few months ago.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
It was such a big impact, had such a big impact on the way that I.
Yeah, he's a real scholar, and he really went deep to come
the work
up with
that he and I have not been to Eleusis yet, but that's on my short list. I'm going to get to. I want to make that trek from you know, Athens to Eleusis and just kind of feel what it feels like to be in that part of the world.
Yeah. I mean, the versions I recommend of the Bhagavad Gita and the Tao Te Ching are the Stephen Mitchell translation. Which I found out that JD also agrees those are the best, because JD is quite a scholar on this, and those are just so well done, and he's got such a beautiful, contemplative, you know, soothing voice. And then it's fun. I've actually dove back into Wayne Dyer's how to actually embody the Tao. I'll put a link in the show notes.
I have not read that. I should read
it's good. It's cool because it gives you daily exercises for each verse of the Tao Te Ching.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but I mean, you can find these repeating patterns. I mean, the Tao Te Ching is it's throughout the Torah, it's throughout the Bible.
Yeah,
it's
repeated
it's throughout the Quran. I mean, these the repeating patterns are just, we've all been learning from each other. And again, that common spiritual root that we find, that is where the reality actually is.
Yeah.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground, my friend. It's been really fun. We should probably start to wrap it up here. Let's emphasize again this conference coming up. ROI of why. Love conquers fear. Together we rise. Right. So what are the dates again?
May 27th through 29th in Omaha, Nebraska, the middle of everywhere, as we like to say.
Yeah, yeah.
And there will
Warren
be
Buffett town.
Warren Buffett's hometown.
Some of my favorite memories are going to the Berkshire Hathaway shareholders meeting. Do you know how he closed out his last letter as the CEO of Berkshire?
No, how did he close it out?
The last sentence is, remember that the cleaning lady is every bit as much of a human being as the chairman. Yeah, that's how talk about love conquering fear. Yeah. Like he is the embodiment of that.
He is.
So it's very poetic that we're going to be talking about love conquering fear funny. In Omaha.
We have a prominent business leader in our community that just sent me a note the other day. He's so excited about the conference, and he talked about the conference, the ROI of Why, as being the most important business event that happens in Nebraska outside of Berkshire Hathaway's annual meeting.
Right.
60,000 people from around the world descend on Omaha for that. It's a beautiful sight.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Our event will be held in Omaha. We'll have over 400 people in our live audience and several thousand, most likely, on the virtual audience. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be a deep dive into the things we're talking about here today, and even deeper into the execution on how to, not necessarily the why, because the people that are connected to our movement, they get the why.
Right.
What we focus on, they're self-selecting.
They care a lot about.
They're not going to show up at our event if they're not aligned with the idea that business can and should be a force for good in the world.
Right.
So that's kind of the basic premise. And so then we dig pretty heavy into the how. And I'm very excited about it. The cost to attend the conference, you can buy a ticket on the website at domoregood.com. It's $300 at our early bird rate right now. And the best way...
Which is so affordable.
So affordable.
I mean, most conferences are a lot.
Substantially more than that, yeah. We have a great conference hotel just walking distance from the venue that, like for $120, that's the benefit of doing this in Nebraska. Is everything's going to be less expensive.
And it's a time of year in Nebraska where it's not too cold.
It's going to be
This
beautiful.
is spoken as a Texan.
Yes. Absolutely. It'll be a beautiful time to be there.
Yeah, it'll be very nice.
And the best way for, if you have a team of people, if you're in a company and you have leaders or others, we would love to encourage people to consider becoming a company host. Mm-hmm. We have room for 20 total. And that includes, it's for $5,000. It includes 10 tickets to the event. Mm-hmm. And the idea behind our host program is that we want business leaders to invite others from their network to come join and to help, accelerate the conversation, like-minded folks. So,
I felt really called and moved to join as a superhost. And
thank you.
And as a result, I'm inviting quite a few of the CEOs of companies we're investors in. We're investors in 150 companies.
Love that.
And have been doing that for 16 years. That's like my side gig.
Yeah, the side gig.
But that's been amazing. I mean, it's been really, we've really focused our investing now on looking for the companies that we really believe in our hearts are going to get us to abundance for all. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be fun to have them in the mix too.
Yeah, and that's what people will experience when they come. Just they'll be surrounded by those like minds, and I believe it will be a transformational event for those that join us.
Yeah. Well, super excited about it, man.
Thank you.
Thanks for your heart.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for believing in me and the Love Conquers Fear book, and it's going to be amazing to get it out there. I'm so geeked out right now just about the cover. I mean, the cover is so cool.
The cover was magnificent.
And the cover came from an idea that you had working with different designers, and then we just kind of riffed from there. So you guys have added a lot of dimensionality and love to the book. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been a deep honor and pleasure to be part of the project, just to have a role in it.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in to another awesome episode of Love Conquers Fear. I'm so excited about the book, in that editing process right now and falling in love with it all over again, making it better and better. One of the most challenging things about a book like this is that AI moves so fast, but the topics that I'm discussing in the book really are the most durable topics, because we're talking about the arc of human history and the problems that we need to transcend that have been around for a long time, and I'm confident that we will do it. Thanks again for tuning in. Thanks for all the love out there. I cannot tell you how much of a high it gives me to get your comments, to have meetings with you all, to get so many emails and messages where people are having a real heart shift. So keep it coming, keep sharing it. Like I said, I'm self-funding this. It is my love letter to humanity, and it's going to take us all, Team Humanity all the way. Love conquers fear. Thank you.